How's it going, everyone? This is Mike. Welcome back to another video. This is going to be an episode of a project that James and Ian and I call Genre Files, which is we just take a certain genre of films, pick a topic, and then we each pick a film from that genre and talk about it. And this is something that we've done before. I can't remember the last time we did Genre Files. We were doing it Genre Files. We were doing it maybe a couple of years ago or something. Then we stopped, and then we started again. So I don't know. I guess now James and Ian want to do this for just a certain amount of time. So I'm very happy to play along. Like to follow along their example of things they like to do. So anybody else out there who would like to play along with us, please do it. The more the merrier. Okay. So the genre that we have for this weekend. By the way, we're supposed to do these on Friday. This is now after 8 o'clock on Saturday, so as usual, I am a day late, and $1 short. So, what else is new? So we're supposed to be doing superhero films. I picked this 1951 release called Superman and the Mole Men. Wow. Which came out right before the TV series started filming. This was kind of a lead-in or a pilot for that series, starring George Reeves as Superman and Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. And of course now George Reeves continued to the end of the TV series. Phyllis Coates was only in the first season. There had already been a couple of serials put out with the Superman character, and I actually have these on this nice little set, which I have not watched yet, but I think I might watch these tonight. And in the serials, we had Kirk Alyn as Superman and Noel Neill as Lois Lane. And, of course, Noel Neill went on to replace Phyllis Coates for the rest of the series. So this very low-budget black and white film, all of 58 minutes long, it's a fun little movie, and I had a good time watching it. But it didn't have a lot of science fiction atmosphere or activity going on. I mean, you had Superman, but we didn't get to see him fly very much, and he wasn't doing a lot of daring feats and all that sort of thing. You saw a few bullets bouncing off his chest when he was standing here like that. But other than that, it's basically kind of like a low-budget Western. It takes place in this small town out in the middle of nowhere where there's an oil field, and someone has drilled the deepest oil well known to mankind. Something like, I think they said it was 32,000 feet. Which is when Lois Lane comes out to do a story with Clark Kent about this oil well, she exclaims, "Why, that's the center of the earth." Why, yes, Lois, it is. So we find out that there have been some mysterious deaths going on around this oil field, and it turns out that there was these little men, these little creatures, very short actors, who have been coming out of this hole. They're mole men living in the center of the earth, right? So they're all dressed in kind of dark leotards, and they have bald caps on, and they look vaguely alienish, but not really. They just look like very short actors. For some reason, they don't speak, and they seem to be somehow radioactive. So when they touch something or someone, like a plant or an animal or a person, that person dies of radiation poisoning. So it's not very pretty. But they're just curious to see why their homeland at the center of the earth has been invaded. I guess they don't speak, so we don't know exactly what they're thinking. But they're exploring this new world and perplexed by what they see. And of course, people, the rednecks, who are sort of like a bunch of cowboys living in this small town, decide to chase them down and kill them because they are killing some of their local citizens. So they just do what rednecks always do. They just go out and they get a bunch of guns and a mob, and they just hunt these little mole men down. And Superman tries to take their side because he feels that their homeland has been invaded, and he thinks all they want to do is just be left alone, go back home. So Superman is, as usual, being the good guy. He is on the side of the downtrodden. So that's the story. It's really not much of a story, and as I said, there isn't that much in the way of special effects or Superman-type adventure, but it's still a lot of fun. You get to see the interaction between Clark and Lois. Of course, Clark Kent always mysteriously runs away at the first sign of trouble. And here's Lois saying, he always does that. He's such a coward. Clark, come back here. And if you remember Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane, she was much more strident and very much it's kind of the alpha woman, much more than the Noel Neill interpretation of Lois Lane. So Phyllis Coates is a very strong actress and very strong character. So, and then of course 2 seconds after Clark disappears, here comes Superman, and he looks exactly like Clark, sounds exactly like him, and of course nobody gets it, and it doesn't make any sense at all. But since you love the character and you love the show, you really don't care, because all of a sudden Lois is saying, it's Superman, and you know, everything's okay. So as I said, it's only 58 minutes long. Let's see, now when the TV series started, they actually chopped this 58-minute movie up into 2 parts and made a 2-part sequence in the TV show. But for some strange reason, they changed the story or the characters from Mole Men to the Unknown People. I guess the Mole Man community was upset about the way they were being portrayed. So in the interest of political correctness, they had to change the name to Unknown People, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's what happened. Directed by a guy named Lee Sholem, who had a nickname called Rollum Sholem. I guess he directed dozens and dozens of TV shows and several films as well. And he always managed to get everything he did under budget. And he was just notorious for getting things done and getting them done efficiently. So he was very well sought after as a director. And he had a 40-year career as a director. So now there are a couple of fairly well-known names that some of you may have heard of who turned up in this movie. A child actress named Beverly Washburn was in it. She's a really cute little girl, and she played in a brief scene where the mole men, who were about as big as she was, they crawl in through her window at night, and she says, hello, you want to come in? And then she's not afraid of them, so they start playing with her. And Beverly Washburn was very well known as a, well, let's say she got a lot of work as a child actress all through the 1950s and up into the 60s. And she did a lot of Disney films. She was in Old Yeller, very notorious for being a great crier. That was her forte as a child actress. She could cry at the drop of a hat, and she just always looked like she was about ready to cry. She doesn't cry in this one, though. And there's another very interesting actor, a guy named Jeff Corey. Plays one of the redneck bad guys. In fact, he's sort of the leader of the mob, so he gets a lot of screen time. Jeff Corey, by this time, had already done a lot of roles in films, mostly uncredited, very small parts, low-budget films. And in fact, he was in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, very small part, uncredited role. Jeff Corey, after this was made, he was blacklisted by the House Un-American Activities Committee and was unable to work as an actor until the early 1960s. So during this time, he supported himself by becoming a very well-respected and a very well-respected acting teacher. And when he finally started working again in the 1960s, he ended up making one of my all-time favorite films and one of James's favorite films, the movie Seconds, directed by John Frankenheimer, where he had a very good supporting role in that, along with 2 other formerly blacklisted actors, John Randolph and Will Geer. So now Phyllis Coates, believe it or not, is still living. She is 91 years old. That's a nice piece of trivia for you. She did a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, all through the 40s and 50s and up into the 60s and 70s even. And she did Panther Girl of the Congo, which is a very cool serial. She had a good supporting role in I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, so she was all over the place. And I guess that's pretty much all I want to say about Superman and the Mole Men. Had a good time watching this. I think you might enjoy it. And I will see you next week for another chapter of Genre Files. Good night.